Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Wisco Whiskey Review. My name is Jeff, and in today's episode, we're going to take a look at the Johnnie Walker A Song of Fire blended whiskey. Now, this is kind of a newer expression from the Johnnie Walker brand, which is one of the biggest brands in the blended Scotch category in the world. I mean, they're super well known. You've probably heard of them. They're owned by Diageo, which is also one of the biggest kind of beverage conglomerates in the business. So the distribution, the marketing, everything's on point there. So this is one, it's a newer one, and obviously from the bottle design and even in the name, it references Game of Thrones. So Diageo paired up with HBO's Game of Thrones show to kind of come out with a bunch of different offerings. Now, the one that they were known for was a single malt line, which I believe there was 8 of them, and they're all single malt Scotch whiskeys from different distilleries, all owned by Diageo, that kind of, were one-off bottlings or exclusive bottlings. They also paired with Johnnie Walker from Diageo to produce so far 3 different blended Scotch whiskeys in kind of the Game of Thrones line. The first one was the White Walker blended Scotch, and that came out, I believe, in 2018. And then I think it was either late 2019 or last year was when they introduced both A Song of Fire and A Song of Ice, which kind of harked back to the Game of Thrones book series, which is actually officially known as A Song of Ice and Fire. So it all kind of, comes back full circle here. So again, just to get real quick, I won't go into a history of either Diageo or Johnnie Walker. I'd like to do another video sometime where I compare maybe like the kind of the bottom 4 expressions of Johnnie Walker, because there are quite a few of them in their lineup. But I wanted to do this one because it's kind of a one-off, so it kind of stands apart from those. So I won't go into the history of Johnnie Walker. If you want to look it up, in the meantime, they've got a pretty extensive history, and it's pretty impressive, and I find it kind of exciting and interesting. But you can do that on your own time, or hopefully sometime soon I'll release my Johnnie Walker video and I'll include more of the history then. So just a quick overview of this bottle. Again, it's blended Scotch whiskey, which means that it contains both malt whiskey and it contains grain whiskey. So the malt whiskey that goes into this blended Scotch whiskey is from a distillery called Palate, and that's in Scotland, of course. I don't know, what the specific makeup or the percentages of malt whiskey to grain whiskey are in this. They didn't disclose that, but it is, a combination of those. Now, Palate is, they're kind of known to have a more peated malt, and even on the bottle and when I looked it up online, this is supposed to have, kind of peated characteristics. So we'll see if that smoke kind of comes through. So full disclosure is that I have had this before. This isn't a fresh bottle, so all of my notes and stuff like that, every day to day it's going to be different going into a whiskey. So I have had this before, but I figured I'd share this with you guys. So let's get into it here. I'd also like to say that this is a low 40.8% ABV. I'm not sure why they didn't go down to 40%, which is the lowest you can go to, but for some reason they felt 40.8% was where it needed to be. So if you haven't seen my videos before, what I'm going to do is grade the nose, the palate, the finish, and the value, all from a 0 to 10 grading scale, and then just average out the total. So I don't grade the color because there's a lot that can go into that to change it. And with Scotch, you can add coloring to it. With straight bourbon, you can't add coloring, but with Scotch, you can. This falls kind of more into that lighter category. That's kind of what I expect Scotches to look like. It's got a nice kind of golden amber kind of color going on with it. It it seems to hug the glass pretty well. All right, so let's get into the nose. So like I said, both viewing the bottle online and also reading the back of the bottle, it mentions smoke from that peated malt from Palate. Now, I'm not picking that up on the nose at all. I mean, if anything, there's just a whisper, like a breath of smoke coming in there. But what I'm getting mostly is a lot of just sweetness, a lot of caramel, a lot of red fruits, maybe some grassiness. I mean, it's very fresh smelling. It doesn't have that again, I'm not really picking up much peat on this, so I'm getting more of kind of those sweet floral honeyed fruit notes coming on. I mean, it's a good, you know, smelling whiskey here. There's nothing offensive about it. There's not really a whole lot kind of, you know, bouncing out at me out of this glass or popping out. I mean, it's pleasant. Let's give it a sip. Yeah, so even on the palate, at least on the first sip of this one, again, that can change between, you know, the first sip to the third, fourth, whatever. I'm just not really picking up a whole lot of smoke. Again, if there is any smoke there, there's just like a whisper of smoke. I mean, I guess compared to like a bourbon or like a Speyside Scotch, there might be a little bit of smoke in there. But I've tried both the Johnnie Walker Black and the Johnnie Walker Double Black, and even just the regular Johnnie Walker Black has quite a bit more smoke to it in the blend than this one does. And the Johnnie Walker Black is kind of known to be kind of an intro to peat. It doesn't have a ton of it in there, but it is noticeable. With this one, you know, unless you told me about it, I might miss it. But it does have, you know, a lot of the caramels, like I said, the red fruits. There's a lot of like kind of apple and raspberry going on in here. All right, so now that I've tried a sip, we'll go back to the nose and I'll grade that. I'm gonna try to keep this video shorter. There's really not a whole lot that's like wowing me about this nose. Again, it's not, I wouldn't say there's anything really offensive about it. It is kind of a, you know, a pleasant nose, but there's nothing kind of coming out. There's nothing wowing me or standing out. I'd probably give this a 4.5 on the nose. It's not really doing enough for me. There is a little bit of ethanol kind of burn, both kind of in the front and in the medium part of the nose. It's only kind of the mid to back after you get past that ethanol to where you get a lot of those fruits, the honey, kind of those floral notes, things like that. All right, so now we're gonna go into the palate. Like I said, I took one sip of this already, but we'll try another one because sometimes after that first sip, once your tongue kind of gets used to the ethanol a little bit or the alcohol, you'll start to pick up more things on the taste. So cheers again. So luckily, to kind of save this one, the palate is bringing a lot more kind of to the game than the nose was. The nose was kind of let down for me, but the palate at least has more things going on with it. There's the first thing that kind of comes to me is just that honey. There's a lot of honey with a little bit of kind of caramel drizzle thrown in there. That's the first thing I pick up. Then after that, it's more of kind of the fruit and the floral that comes in. There is a little bit of spice, and again, maybe a hint of smoke, not much, but this is definitely, I would consider, a sweeter Scotch. This I wouldn't put in that peppery, definitely not super peaty variety. You know, there's also like briny. There's a ton of different kind of nuances that Scotch brings, but this falls into the more kind of sweeter, fruity, floral category for me. So yeah, there's, you know, again, there's not like, this isn't blowing me away necessarily, but the palate is, to me, a lot better than the nose. I'm gonna give the palate a nice round 6 out of 10. All right, so now we'll go into the finish, and that's simply just the flavors and how long those flavors last after you've already had it, and what kind of lingers at the end. So as I previously mentioned, you know, the beginning and middle kind of brings a lot of that sweetness and fruit forward. It's after you let it sit for a while. I'd say this is about a medium long finish, short to medium. It doesn't last super long. It's after you get past that sweetness that the spice really kind of shows up. It's not quite as much spice or even the same spice as you get from, let's say, a bourbon, but there is a lot of like clove, you know, some nutmeg and allspice. It's kind of the same things, but there's also like just a floral spice that I can't really put my finger on. But that kind of shows up in the tail end too. And again, any of the peat that you might pick up on this one is going to show up at the end. It doesn't really show up in the beginning or the middle for me. I guess to rate the finish, you know, being kind of a shorter to medium finish, again, not, you know, there's nothing in it that's offensive or that's really bad by any means, but it just isn't really wowing me. There's just a ton going on. It doesn't really do much for me. So let's see, we'll give the finish just an even keel 5 out of 10. All right, so that brings us to the last category, which is value. Now, this is probably going to fluctuate in price depending on if you can still find it. how available it still is, if they're even rolling it out yet. I picked this up recently, so I know that, you know, as of I think it was a couple months ago, you could still get this. You know, filming this in March of 2021, and I think I picked this up for about $17.99 or something like that. Again, in the Midwest, so the price might vary, you know, depending on the region, depending on availability in the state you live in, or country, depending on where you're watching this from. But I'd say for that price specifically, this is a good value. If you're looking to get into Johnnie Walker, if you're looking to get into scotches, this is just a good, you know, just pour it, you can sip it. You know, it's not going to set your wallet back any. It's not going to wow you necessarily, but it is a different expression from Johnnie Walker. So, you know, if you're used to drinking the red label, the black labels, green, gold, any of the other ones, you know, this might be something new that you can try just to kind of see, you know, where it stands for you against those other ones. You know, as far as, again, the wow factor to me isn't quite there. I do like the presentation. You know, they did a great job with just the marketing and the bottle and everything like that. And I guess if you're a really big Game of Thrones fan, you know, you could keep the bottle, repurpose it for something. So I'd say this is a pretty good value. Now, if this was like a, you know, $30 bottle, I would say the value is probably not quite there. Even at $25, I'd say, you know, it's about a wash, 50-50 if I'd recommend it or not. But, you know, for anything under 20, I'd say give this a shot. That's a great value. So again, value is always subjective, just like all the other categories, but we're gonna put the value at a 7 on this one. All right, so now we have our total, and again, I did this without a calculator, so hopefully it's correct. But my math, it brings it out to 5.625 out of 10, which, you know, it's not horrible, it's not amazing, and I think that's kind of says exactly what I wanted to say about this whiskey. It's not horrible, but it's not amazing. I think, you know, for something new that you could pick up to try, you know, I think it brings enough there where, you know, you can sip it. Again, to me, it's not going to be offensive. It's not going to be like horrible by any means, but it's not going to really stand out as like something that you'll remember, you know, in a couple months to a year or something. It just doesn't really stand out as being spectacular. All right, so that's about the end of this. Thanks again for watching, guys. If you could comment, like, and subscribe to the channel, that would help me out tremendously. Any kind of interaction or comments or anything like that really help, and I do try to read all the comments. I'm going to try to keep rolling videos out, you know, at least once a week, hopefully more if I can get around to it. And I'll just help, you know, help the channel grow and get some more content out there for you guys. So thanks again for watching, and keep on sipping.